In today's video, we're going to be talking about Chinese New Year, namely 2021. Currently, it's still Chinese New Year. Suppliers, fulfillment companies, shipping carriers still haven't returned, and they are due to return any day now. But we're going to be covering the usual things, such as what you should be doing before, during and after Chinese New Year. This is quite a bit of a late video because you should actually start planning for Chinese New Year at least 2 months in advance, depending on your situation and your position. But we're going to cover all of that, and this is still going to be relevant next year and the year after. It happens every year, and it's pretty much the same thing still applies to dropshippers and e-commerce store owners fulfilling from China, regardless of if it was 5 years back or 5 years in the future. It's still going to be very relative to you. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Okay, so first off, just want to explain what happens before and during Chinese New Year so that you understand from an e-commerce or dropshipper's perspective. So before Chinese New Year, obviously there's a ramp up for demand. So for example, everyone knows that suppliers or manufacturers are going to be off for that period. So what they do in advance is that they pre-order inventory or get lots of inventory sent internationally, bulk freighted to their destination country. So that's why there's an increase in demand, not only from suppliers and manufacturers, but also for shipping, freight forwarders, cargo planes and stuff like that. So you sometimes tend to see an increase in costs for shipping rates, and also sometimes you also tend to see supply chain issues. So suppliers running out of stock for in-demand products, and then that usually happens every year, and that's why it takes planning. You should be planning at least 2 months in advance before Chinese New Year in order to make sure that you're not going to be caught out. So it differs. So it depends on what your position is. If you're a dropshipper, for example, who's just starting out or is just selling very low volume, my recommendation would be to stop selling your products or stop your campaigns, or at the very least you make it very clear on your website for any orders to state there won't be any orders being sent out during that period, or however long your supplier is off for on AliExpress or wherever you order from. And I mean, I don't really recommend that because you're gonna reduce your conversion rate, and you're going to have, if you're just about making profit, or even if you're just breaking even, by doing that and listing on your website that you won't be able to send until after Chinese New Year or by a certain date, then almost certainly you're going to start losing money, and you're kind of wasting the ad spend on your ads. So that's my advice for dropshippers during Chinese New Year. Of course, it's not always the case, but as a kind of general rule of thumb. If you are an experienced dropshipper and you have decent volume, then you have good margins, you can afford to do the latter, what I mentioned. Just make it clear, if you still want to continue selling during Chinese New Year and you have a good supply chain, you've ordered inventory in with your agent or fulfillment company, then you can afford to do that. That's not an issue, because for us, for example, we're only off for 6 days. So from the 11th until the 17th, that's when we're off. We're back on the 18th. So a lot of our clients have ordered inventory to make sure that they don't have any supply chain issues. So as soon as we're back on the 18th, we're going to be sending as normal. But I understand that not everyone has the luxury of cash flow. So you may not have the option to order lots of inventory and keep that in stock simply because you don't have enough money in the bank, so to speak. So in that case, as long as your margins are okay, you can then make it clear on your website that that orders will be dispatched later after Chinese New Year. And in doing so, I mean, you never know, but generally speaking, there are less, you get better value for your ads because a lot of would-be dropshippers or e-commerce store owners won't be running ads during this period for that exact same reason. They don't want the hassle or the potential issues, especially if they haven't planned for it, that they kill their ads, and CPMs you might see tend to drop during this period of the year. Established e-commerce store owners and brands, they likely have, some of our clients, the larger ones, have sent bulk freight to their best-selling countries, and this was done months ago, so that they're in our US warehouse or whichever country that they're selling to, ready to send during that period. And then we help them transition. So from the 11th until the 17th, the US sends all of their orders out domestically, and then on the 18th, if they want to switch back to us from China, that's done as well. It's not an issue, but it does take some planning. With our clients, we have lots of different type of clients. Some are not new dropshippers because we, as you probably know, we have an MOQ and we don't collaborate or work with those just starting out or those with low volume. So we have dropshippers who have are relatively experienced, will have at least 10 consistent orders a day, and they've been doing it for 6 months to a year. So in that case, we brief them and give them enough notice to say, look, your supply is going to be off between so and so date and their return back on this date. What would you like to do? Would you like to order some inventory in so we can continue fulfilling just as soon as we come back from Chinese New Year? Or would you like to pause your campaigns? Or of course, if you had the cash flow, you're more than welcome for us to order. So say, for example, the supply is off for a month. Some supplies do go off for that long during Chinese New Year. If they really wanted to, they could order a month's worth of inventory, and we can either get that sent to our Chinese warehouse or send it to the US warehouse. But sending it to the US warehouse will need to be done at least 2 months before Chinese New Year to ensure it arrives in time. If it's being sent to our Chinese warehouse, then it's going to need to be ordered. It's going to need to be ordered at least a week before the supplier goes off, just to make sure there's no issues on the road or problems with the stock once it arrives, and any other unforeseen problems. So with each of our clients, we give them a timeline. So when their suppliers, basically a holiday schedule, when they're off, when they return, and when they can roughly expect to start ordering as normal on a dropshipping model. This is what you have to take note, is that these dates are provided to us from the suppliers. So you can't. I never tell or mention to our clients that these are set dates and reliable dates, because Sometimes there may be a day or two deviation. Maybe they will come in later than they forecasted, or maybe they might come in a little earlier. But that's not the issue. The issue is down to the inventory that they have. So say on the day that they do return, there's a surge in requests. So, they're selling more products. They've got lots of orders over the holidays, and they don't have enough inventory for our clients. So that's something else different entirely. Suppliers or manufacturers coming back on a certain date doesn't necessarily mean that they will be able to send or dispatch orders as normal as they were doing before Chinese New Year. So I will always recommend that don't stick to those particular days. Add another 5 days just in case as a worst case scenario. So that's the basics, the very basics, and how you should be operating or think to operate before Chinese New Year and during Chinese New Year. It's pretty much the same thing year after year, that you shouldn't wait until the last minute and then worry and start panicking, deciding what to do. If that is what you're doing, you need to seriously consider what your goals are, and next year at least learn from it, and next year plan it much more in advance. So otherwise you're going to run into lots of issues, especially if you're still working on AliExpress. The vendors will be off for, there's no set time. So officially Chinese New Year is from the 11th until the 17th of February, but some vendors and suppliers and manufacturers take a week off, some take a fortnight, some take a month, some even longer. So you can't base it on the calendar, the Chinese calendar, because most businesses don't go by that. Chinese New Year is a very important holiday, and this is where they travel throughout China, because they could be working on one side of China but their family is in the other side, and that could mean, on a train it could mean a 48-hour or more trip. So it is an extremely important holiday, and that is why some suppliers take a very long time off. So what happens after Chinese New Year's? When all the suppliers come back, everything is back to normal, say a month later, this is when you can expect to see some delay, a delay of some sort, whether that's in the supply chain, whether that's in transit time. There is going to be a delay regardless. So even if you have inventory that you've left with that you've ordered in with your agent or fulfillment company, they will probably have some backlog. The first day they're back. So us, for example, we're going to have 7 days worth of orders that we need to get out. Albeit it wouldn't be normal order volume. It's going to be reduced quite a lot, simply because not many would still be running ads and still be selling throughout Chinese New Year. But those that do, that's all obviously going to have to be sent out on the 18th on our return back. So from a fulfillment company or agent perspective, we might have 48 hours, 24-hour delay. So from the 18th, 48 hours later, we should be caught up and all parcels will be sent out. But taking into consideration, Unexpress, for example, they will have backlog as well. So they may have 2 or 3 day delay processing time, getting your orders through the network and getting them dispatched. Then there could potentially be transit time delays. So, whether that's domestically within China or internationally once it arrives in the destination country. That's a given. It varies year to year, but generally that's what you would see. You would see delay at somewhere along the line. And that's something you need to take into consideration. So best case scenario, even if you do have inventory, you've planned everything, your supplier agent is back and back to normal working hours, and they're processing as normal, they've got all the backlog out of the way, you still expect some delay somewhere along that line. So the reason I'm saying this is so that you don't on your funnel or your landing page or on your store, wherever you write the notification for your customers, that you don't commit to or guarantee a certain delivery time, because you can't tell the future. You seriously don't know what's going to happen after Chinese New Year. For all we know, there could be another COVID spike in a particular country or within China, whatever. But that aside, just always put, I'd say, at least 5 days on top of what you're expecting. Just think of the worst case scenario. So, that being said, I would say you can start placing orders again with if you're not working with a supplier and agent and they haven't given you a kind of plan or timeline and notified you when your suppliers are back, then I would say, if you're working with AliExpress vendors and stuff like that, I would say it's safe to assume that things will be back to normal and you can start placing orders with them probably about the 1st of March, somewhere around that period. Before then, it will be very patchy. Some vendors won't be responding to you, some will still be off, there's not going to be any movement at all. So any orders that you placed just before Chinese New Year probably haven't budged at all, and don't expect them to budge until they get back and they're up to speed. As far as suppliers are concerned, similar kind of thing. Expect first week of March that everything should be back to normal. Carriers and transit shipping times and transit times, not so much. I would say around the 22nd, something like that, 22nd of February, everything should hopefully be back to normal. So if you are still just to summarize, if you are still dropshipping and doing low volume and you still got below AliExpress sellers and vendors and you're dealing with them, I would say expect around the first of March, first week of March, for you to continue as normal. Everywhere else, if your agent or supplier or fulfillment company has notified you the date that they return, then I would say about a week after that, everything should be back to normal and you can start running ads and placing orders as normal. So that's it for this video. There wasn't much to it. As mentioned, it was quite short. Just wanted to some of this may be quite obvious to some of you, to others it may not be, which is the whole reason I created this video. So this is probably going to be relevant even in 5 years time, because it has been the same. It's been the same case for the past 5 years. So you can use this video and come back to it next year. So save this video. Obviously, be sure to subscribe, and just make sure you plan well ahead, not only for Chinese New Year but also for other Chinese holidays. So another one, for example, is Chinese national holiday, so kind of like equivalent of Independence Day for the States, but it's a longer period. That's a date you need to bear in mind. So, but it's the same thing. All the same principles apply. Yes, suppliers don't go off; they're not off for such a long period. But if you want to continue selling without any interruptions, just make sure that you have inventory, or you've sent inventory to your best-selling country, or you stop ads or you just make it very clear on your sales page. So that's it. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, see ya.